Hi there, and welcome to MiWeek. I'm Christy McDonald. Thanks so much for joining us. We have a big show coming up for you tonight, including some political news we expected to hear and some we really didn't. Plus, competing with every other city in the country for Amazon's new headquarters. Is it worth it? And a closer look at one photographer's journey to show the struggles and beauty of a small immigrant community. That plus headlines is all coming up for you on MiWeek. But we are starting first with some politics, an announcement that we knew was coming and one that we really didn't know was coming. Bill Schuette's running for governor, no surprise, and Congressman Dave Trott of the 11th District deciding to retire. Let's bring in Nolan Finley of the Detroit News and Stephen Henderson of the Detroit Free Press. Hey guys, so some political news that some we knew about. We talked about it even here last week. So he just made it official. But I want to start off.
14 months out now.
Yeah, I know. We'll get to that in just a minute. I want to start off with the one that we really weren't expecting. I'm going to start with you, Nolan, first, because you wrote a column about this. Dave Trott deciding to retire. Where do you think that came from?
Well, I think it comes out of a frustration with the process. Here's a guy who spent his whole life building a business, was a CEO. When he said, let's do something, it got done. And when he went down to Washington, I said, Dave, I don't think you're going to be all that happy joining this dysfunctional committee that can never get anything done. And you know, you're not going to be always working with people who share your goals or with the brightest lights in the world. And I think he got frustrated with the process. He says it's family. You know, I believe that there are some family considerations there, but you're seeing a lot of moderate Republicans now leaving Congress. There's 15, 20, 25 GOP congressmen thinking about retiring. That's going to make it that much harder in the 2018 midterm election for Republicans to hang on to the House.
You know, I think it's kind of interesting when you say that you're not also with some of the brightest lights of the world, but isn't that really what Congress is supposed to be? Isn't this supposed to be people representing us who are smart, passionate people?
It's been a long time, I think, since we saw that be the norm, in particular in the House. I mean, the House, you know, historically the House was never supposed to be all that genteel or considered. I mean, it was supposed to be the people's chamber, and people were supposed to go for a while, stay there, and then come back and rejoin private life. But we've seen this sort of dumbing down of Congress more through the Senate, I think, than in the House. I mean, the Senate was supposed to be the sort of more intellectual body and more deliberative body. You've seen much more bare-knuckled politics there, and the changing of rules that were supposed to preserve that civility. You know, I talked to Dave Trott on Mackinac this year.
And he was actually on the panel, and I spoke to him too, about civility in Washington.
Yeah, right.
And had a lot to say about that.
He did, but one of the things he said to me up on Mackinac was that he wasn't that happy there. I mean, he just didn't like it. He didn't like the acrimony. He didn't like the slow pace. I'm interested to know whether Paul Mitchell, who's sort of a similar background and who spent a lot of his own money to try to get a seat.
He's got to stay a long time to get his money's worth.
Well, yeah, right.
He's got about $7-8 million.
But I bet he's having the same kind of feeling.
Sure.
It's not the same, you know, it's not. Number one, these are very powerful people in private life, right? They command an enormous number of other people and other things. You don't get to do that as one of 435 in Congress.
And if people who haven't enjoyed that sort of power in private life get down there, and once you arrive in Washington, I mean, it's a lot different when they come home here. When they come home here, a congressman is, you know, okay, but it's not. You know, you go down there and they are getting their butt kissed on every corner. It's congressman this and congressman that and chairman this, chairman that, and it gets addictive to see a guy stay 4 years and say, I don't really like this. It will be.
By the time
I don't really like this. You know, it's not for me. I'm going to let somebody else have a chance. That's a rare thing. You usually have to drag them out. They got mold on them, for gosh sake. They've been there so long.
Let me ask you this then. So then if you have someone like Dave Trott, who, you know, was a CEO, is a very successful businessman, if you have people who are starting to resign or say, I'm not going to run again because I'm disillusioned by the process, or I'm disillusioned at what this body has become, or that you cannot get anything done, what does that say about the next generation of people who are going to be running for office? And what does that say about the effectiveness of where we're going to be with Congress?
Well, I mean, I think if you look at who would you consider the bench, right, for seats like Trott's, I think you do have a crop of younger people right now who are off doing important things in public service at the very low level, at the organizing level, at the low political level, who I think are going to have a really different view of service in some place like Congress. So someone like Garland Gilchrist, who is running for city clerk in Detroit, is a really interesting example of a young person who has really interesting beliefs and strong beliefs, but has gone out and made good on those beliefs in the private sector or in the nonprofit sector.
You just look at the ballot this year. I mean, the number of young people running for key seats. You got Abdul El-Sayed on the Democratic side, Lena Epstein running for Senate.
Or she could be running for Dave Trott's seat now. Did you see? She says,
yeah,
I might want to double check.
She's going to announce, actually, and it was supposed to announce today with her, and I think she'll probably end up running for Trott's seat. But, you know, you got the John James, who's running for Senate. These are all good, smart, young people. I don't think the next generation has been discouraged at all.
I think it's going to look really different from the current crop, right? I mean, these are people who have gone out and done things that I guess express their beliefs, and now they're ready to try to put it into policy. I would maybe not put Lena Epstein in that category, but some of the others that we were talking about, I think, are really good examples of that, and so those are the people who are sort of coming up to sort of fill those seats later.
All right, interesting. So we do have to touch upon the fact that Bill Schuette did announce that yes.
Oh, he did? Really?
He did.
I'm shocked.
I'm going to break some news right here
really
and say
shocked.
yes. And I'm sure he knows the good-natured ribbing that he gets. But yes, he is indeed running for governor. Doesn't change a whole lot of what we already knew, Nolan, but does it put a little bit more pressure on Lieutenant Governor Brian Calley to make up that decision and make that?
I mean, he's out now on a listening tour. I don't know exactly what he's listening for, what he hopes to hear. He says he'll make his decision sometime later in October, maybe November. He's taking a real lackadaisical approach to this. I think he's sincerely conflicted about running, and you know, if he's not 100% in for this, I think he should stay out because it's going to be a tough race. I think he benefits. You know, he's obviously not going to get the Trump supporters. He came out against Trump at the end of the campaign. Schuette was on board, but I think he might benefit from the presence of State Senator Pat Colbeck in the race from Canton Township. Colbeck appeals to those Trump voters, those Tea Party voters that Schuette also appeals to and would expect to
split
get.
The vote a little bit.
And well, they might split that vote and Calley slip in. And once that happens, then I think the general election is a whole different picture.
One other thing I want to mention that Bill Schuette's talking. He's pushing its jobs. That he is trying to, and to get people and get the vote. Is that the right tact, or do you believe that that is going to be the #1 issue on people's minds?
So I think it is. I mean, and I'm writing a column for the Weekend about this. I think it's a fine message. It is a very short-sighted message. Our problem right now is actually not jobs so much as it is livability, living wages, wage stagnation. Training. By 2020, 70% of the jobs in the state will require a college degree. Right now, 39% of the people, of adults in the state, have a college degree. I was disappointed that Bill Schuette didn't try to make a more sophisticated appeal to voters about some of the sacrifices that we are going to have to make in the next few years to get things going. The other thing he talked about was tax cuts. He wants to lower the income tax. Citizens Research Council says that by 2022, the structural deficit, if we don't do anything, raise or lower taxes, because of the things that we've already given away, we're at a $2 billion structural deficit by then. We need everyone in the governor's race to be talking about how you fix those things, not just throwing candy out to the masses and saying, hey, I'll lower your taxes.
You got the last word on this, Nolan.
Well, I would agree that the tax cut pitch, I don't quite understand it. People are not clamoring for a tax cut in this state that I'm hearing. And lowering the rate from 4.1 to 3.85 or whatever, it is not going to make that much a difference in people's lives. I think you should be talking about growth, because we're not going to meet the kind of problems you're talking about through tax cuts or tax hikes. You've got to grow the economy. And, Brooks Patterson said to me this week that we're cannibalizing this region by shifting people from one county to downtown, from downtown to other places. We need to grow everything to make this state stronger.
And Bill Schuette is the kind of person, because he's been around for 30 years, he has a lot of gravitas. He could be selling that and people would buy it. I was really surprised that he came out with such a sort of pandering, weak
As you said,
political
we've
message.
got 14 months to go, and time for maybe a little bit of nuance. We'll